My name is Laura Chen, third-generation owner of Golden Dragon Restaurants. When my sister-in-law Kate tearfully revealed she had terminal cancer, our family united around her. We couldn't have known that her illness would unravel the most shocking fraud in our family's history. Growing up in the chaotic yet comforting kitchens of Golden Dragon, I learned two things from my grandfather: the secret to perfect dim sum and the unshakable value of family loyalty. Our restaurant chain, worth $2.5 million and spanning 5 locations, wasn't just a business. It was the Chen family legacy. Every recipe, every tradition, every lesson was a thread in the tapestry of who we were. When my brother Michael married Kate 3 years ago, we embraced her wholeheartedly. She wasn't just his wife. She became one of us. Kate was everything you could want in a sister-in-law: charming, eager to learn, and seemingly devoted to the family business. She spent hours with my grandmother, scribbling down recipes and soaking in our history. Customers adored her. We all did. 6 months ago, everything changed. During our weekly family dinner at the flagship restaurant, Kate sat pale and trembling, picking at her food. When she finally spoke, her voice wavered. "I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer," she said, tears streaming. "The doctors, they've given me 6 months." The room fell silent. My mother's chopsticks clattered to the table. My father's face turned ashen. Michael clutched her hand, sobbing quietly. The weight of her words pressed down on all of us. "We'll get the best doctors, explore every option," my mother began, but Kate shook her head. "It's too late for that. I just want to make the most of the time I have left, and I want to focus on what truly matters: our family's legacy." She turned to me, her voice soft yet resolute. "Laura, with your consulting business keeping you so busy, maybe I could take on more responsibility at Golden Dragon. I want to learn everything I can while I still have time." I hesitated, but my parents quickly overruled me. "She wants to help," my mother insisted. "We should let her." Kate threw herself into the business with an energy that seemed miraculous for someone so ill. She reorganized our inventory, managed staff scheduling, and even took control of the finances. My parents, guilt-ridden and protective, handed her the reins without question. But something felt off. Kate's energy never faltered during business hours, yet she'd suddenly appear frail when challenged. She refused to let anyone accompany her to doctor's appointments and insisted on using new vendors for better deals. The tipping point came when Jason, our head chef of 2 decades, called me in tears. "Miss Laura, something's wrong with the accounts. Our suppliers aren't getting paid, and they're threatening to cut us off." I dropped everything and went through the books. What I found was terrifying. Hundreds of thousands of dollars funneled into unknown accounts. My banking access had been revoked. "Kate handles all that now," my father explained when I confronted him. "She's been making things more efficient." "Dad," I asked, my voice sharp, "when was the last time you saw any medical reports? Have you even spoken to her doctors?" "Laura," my mother snapped, appalled. "How can you say such a thing? She's dying." But the evidence told a different story. That night, I stayed late at the restaurant, breaking into the locked file cabinet in Kate's office. What I found confirmed my worst fears: offshore accounts, forged documents, and even stage makeup. At the bottom of the pile was a signed transfer of Golden Dragon's ownership to Kate, complete with my parents' signatures. "It's a shame you couldn't stay out of it," Kate said from the doorway, startling me. Her frailty was gone, replaced by cold confidence. "How long?" I asked, my voice steady. "Since before the wedding," she replied smoothly. "Your brother was the perfect mark: naive, sentimental, and from a wealthy family. But you were always a problem. That's why I had to sideline you." I glared at her. "The transfer won't hold. Once my parents see." "See what?" Kate smirked. "A loving daughter-in-law taking over because their own daughter was too busy. Oh, and if you're thinking about exposing me, remember, I've already planted evidence of your gambling debts. By tomorrow, the assets will be gone, and the Chens will be left with nothing." She walked out, her heels clicking confidently. I stayed in that office, surrounded by the ruins of my family's dream. Kate thought she had won, but she underestimated me. I pulled out my phone and made a call I'd hoped I'd never need to make. "Detective John, it's Laura Chen. Remember when you said you owed me a favor? I'm cashing in." Kate's was about to unravel. She might have underestimated how far I'd go to protect my family, but she was about to learn the hard way. Meeting Detective Zhang at midnight in the dimly lit dining room of Golden Dragon felt surreal. The once vibrant restaurant, usually filled with laughter and the clatter of chopsticks, was now eerily quiet. Only the steady hum of refrigerators in the kitchen broke the silence. "Show me everything," Detective Zhang said, spreading out her files on the linen-draped table. We'd met years ago in college, where she'd cracked a string of thefts targeting Asian-owned businesses. Now, as a specialist in financial fraud, she was the only person I trusted to help me save my family's legacy. I laid out the incriminating documents I found in Kate's office. She's been siphoning money through fake vendors and diverting payments to offshore accounts. But it gets worse. I handed her the ownership transfer papers. She manipulated my parents into signing over the business. Everything's in her name now. Detective Zhang's expression hardened as she examined the paperwork. The transfer looks legitimate on the surface, but if we can prove she used fraud to obtain it. She paused, flipping through the files. These transactions started months before Kate announced her cancer diagnosis. Exactly, I said, pulling up more data on my laptop. Look at this. 6 months before marrying my brother, she registered a company called New Century Holdings. The transfer started small, building up after she took control of our finances. She's been planning this for years, Zhang murmured. But we need solid proof her cancer diagnosis is fake. I'm ahead of you. I opened another folder. I hired a private investigator last week. Kate claims she's being treated at Memorial Hospital. But there's no record of her as a patient. The PI followed her during one of her so-called chemotherapy sessions. She was at a luxury spa. Detective Zhang's eyes narrowed, and the stage makeup in her office. For faking illness. She only wore it when she needed sympathy or to deflect suspicion. I scrolled to another file. And those new vendors she insisted on using? They're shell companies tied to New Century Holdings. She's been double-dipping, stealing directly through fake payments and inflating costs through bogus invoices. My phone buzzed with a message from Michael. "Family meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Kate says it's urgent, something about restructuring the business." Zhang frowned. "That doesn't give us much time. We need to build a solid case." "We don't have more time," I said, pointing to the transfer authorizations. She scheduled everything for tomorrow afternoon. If those transfers go through, the money's gone, and so is she. Zhang leaned back, considering. "Okay, here's the plan. You go to that meeting, keep her talking, get her to explain this restructuring in detail. I'll bring in my team, but we need her to incriminate herself on record." "How do I do that?" She handed me a small device. "Wear this. It's a brooch with a built-in recorder. Get her talking about the transfers, the restructuring, anything that ties her to the fraud. But Laura," she warned, her tone grave, "be careful. When people like Kate feel cornered, they can be dangerous." The next morning, I arrived at the private dining room wearing the brooch. Kate was already there, looking radiant in a designer suit as she stood at the head of the table, my father's usual place. My parents and Michael were seated, their faces etched with worry. "Laura," Kate said, her surprise quickly masked by a warm smile. "I didn't expect you to join us." "I wouldn't miss it," I replied, taking a seat, "especially not when it concerns our family's legacy." Kate began her presentation with feigned sorrow. "As you know, my time is limited," she said, dabbing her eyes dramatically. "I want to ensure Golden Dragon's future is secure. That's why I've arranged to restructure the business under New Century Holdings." "Interesting timing," I interrupted, "incorporating a new company just before your diagnosis." Kate's smile faltered. "I don't know what you're implying." "Tell me, Kate, how's the treatment going at Memorial Hospital?" "Odd, since they've never heard of you." Her face paled. Michael looked at her, bewildered. "What is she talking about, Kate?" "Laura, stop this," my mother snapped, but I pressed on. "Or maybe we should discuss the fake vendor accounts and offshore transfers. Everything leads back to your accounts, Kate." Kate's voice turned icy. "These accusations are absurd." "Are they? You registered New Century Holdings months before marrying Michael. You've been planning this con from the start." "Enough," my father bellowed, his voice cracking. At that moment, the door opened and Detective Zhang entered with 2 officers. "Kate Williams, or should I say Catherine Morrison? You have a history of fraud in multiple states. It ends here." Kate bolted for her bag, but an officer intercepted her. Inside, they found a one-way ticket to the Cayman Islands, dated for that afternoon. Michael stared at her, his voice breaking. "Kate, is it true?" She didn't answer, instead making a desperate run for the door. Jason, our head chef, blocked her path with a well-placed foot, sending her sprawling. As handcuffs clicked into place, I quietly said, "The stage makeup. That's how you made yourself look sick, wasn't it? While stealing everything my family built." Detective Zhang read Kate her rights as my parents sat in stunned silence. My father finally whispered, "Laura, we should have listened to you." Michael, devastated, kept his head down. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "She fooled all of us. But it's over now." Dawn returned later. She's already trying to cut a deal, offering to return the money in exchange for leniency. But with her record, she's looking at serious prison time. The weeks following Kate's arrest blurred into a storm of legal meetings, financial audits, and painful truths. Every passing day unearthed a new layer of her deception. Detective Zhang's team uncovered that Kate had orchestrated similar schemes in 3 other states, targeting family-owned restaurants. She perfected her act, posing as the perfect daughter-in-law, earning trust, and then gutting businesses from the inside. The cancer con was a first, though, Detective Zhang said one morning over coffee. Usually she just manipulated financial documents. She must have realized how close-knit your family was and knew she needed something bigger to gain control. Michael buried himself in rebuilding the restaurant, working 18-hour days as if sheer effort could undo his misplaced trust. Late at night, I'd find him in the office, surrounded by piles of accounts and invoices, rechecking every line. "I should have known," he said one evening, his voice hollow. There were so many signs. The excuses when I offered to help with her care. The way she avoided letting me come to her appointments. "She was a professional con artist, Michael," I reminded him. "Even the FBI was impressed by the complexity of her scheme. You weren't the first person she fooled." The preliminary hearing was harder than I'd anticipated. Kate sat across from us in a prison jumpsuit, a shadow of the polished woman we'd once welcomed into our family. As the prosecutor outlined her history of fraud, my mother clung to my hand, trembling. "The defendant exploited the Chen family's compassion and trust," the prosecutor declared. "She used a fabricated terminal illness to infiltrate their lives and steal their generational wealth. This was not just fraud, it was a calculated assault on their legacy." Kate's lawyer begged for leniency, citing her cooperation in returning stolen funds. But when the judge asked if she had any remorse, she smiled, a cold, detached smile I'd seen before. "Business is business," she said, echoing the words she once used to dismiss me. "The Chens were too trusting. That's not my fault." The judge's gavel came down with finality. 15 years. Full restitution of all stolen funds. Outside, reporters swarmed us, eager for quotes about the family betrayal, the fake cancer, and the near destruction of our beloved restaurant chain. But none of it mattered. We had healing to do. At dinner that evening, my father cleared his throat. "I've made a decision. I'm stepping down." "Dad, no," Michael and I protested in unison. He raised a hand to silence us. "I'm not giving up. I'm just stepping back. Laura, you saw the truth when the rest of us were blind. And Michael, your dedication these past months has been remarkable. The Golden Dragon is in good hands with you too." And so we restructured the business, this time the right way. Michael took over operations, applying his sharpened accounting skills to ensure we'd never be vulnerable again. I managed strategy and expansion, finally implementing the ideas I'd honed in my consulting career. Together, we rebuilt stronger than ever. A year after Kate's arrest, we gathered for the grand reopening of our flagship location. The private dining room where she'd staged her false cancer announcement now shimmered with joy and celebration. My parents beamed as loyal customers and reporters filled the space. To family, my father toasted, raising his glass, and to learning that real strength isn't about never being deceived. It's about how we rise above it. That night, after the last guest left, I found Michael in Dad's old office, now his. He was holding a family photo from his wedding day, Kate standing beside him, radiant and deceptive. "You know what's strange?" he said quietly. "Sometimes I almost want to thank her. Thank her. If she hadn't tried to destroy us, we wouldn't have come this far. Look at what we've built from her betrayal." He was right. Golden Dragon wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Revenues had doubled, and we'd opened 2 new locations. But more importantly, we were closer as a family, stronger, wiser. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. A message from Detective Zhang. Kate was appealing her sentence, claiming new evidence. I deleted it without hesitation. She no longer mattered. Kate had misunderstood what made our family strong. Our legacy wasn't just in the restaurants or the bank accounts. It was in our love, trust, and resilience. Her betrayal had tested us, but it had also reinforced the bonds that made us unbreakable. As I stood in the now bustling restaurant, watching my parents share their favorite dishes with regulars and Michael leading our expanded team with confidence, I felt a deep peace. Kate had tried to steal our legacy, but she'd only strengthened it. Sometimes the greatest lessons come from the darkest moments. Golden Dragon wasn't just a family business anymore. It was a testament to surviving betrayal and emerging stronger. I still wear Detective John's brooch occasionally. Now just a simple piece of jewelry, it reminds me that no matter how deep it lies, the truth always finds a way. And family, the kind of family that stands together through everything, always finds its way home.